Silvercast. I got my partner in crime back with me this week, Silver Conundrum. How you doing, sir?
What's up, brother? How's everybody doing? How are you doing?
I am doing spectacular. Thank you for asking. How's it going with you, man? Last episode, you were going through some things, man. You was sick, and there was like a hurricane coming through and stuff. How's everything going?
Well, everything's going great, man. The flu is no joke. I'm a big guy. There ain't nothing worse than a big guy getting the flu. You know what we turn into? Big babies. Man, I was down and out.
Well, it's good to have you back, man. Did you hear the episode with Golden Gun?
I did. I listened to all three of them, man. I thought it was awesome as it could be. Like, man, you guys talked about so much stuff and so many things. It was awesome. It broke my heart that I couldn't even be there because there was questions that popped in my head as I was going through. I was just like, oh, man, I wish I could have been there. Like a little kid who had his favorite toy taken away.
Yeah, man, we missed you, man. And we talked for like probably 2 hours. I mean, it was great. And we'll definitely have to have him back, as well as some other guests. I've been talking to a few people about it just to see if they're interested, and we'll go ahead and reach out to some of those folks. We're kind of making a short list, and if you're interested on appearing as a guest on the Silvercast, go ahead and leave that in the comment section, or you can send a message to directly to Silver Conundrum. His email address is in the description of all his videos. So, yeah, it's good to have you back, man. We did miss you last time. And in this episode, we're going to touch on a few different areas. We're going to be talking about the macroeconomy in the United States, and you and I will be kind of comparing the conditions in the U.S. with where I'm at and maybe what we're seeing in some other places around the world. And then we're going to shift gears a little bit in the second part of this fourth episode. We're going to talk about kind of, having fun with like this whole precious metals game as a more of like a hobby or collectible type thing, just having fun with it, versus towing the line and being disciplined and stacking, militant, hardcore. And then in the third part, we're also going to discuss a little bit of strategy. Golden Gun and I talked about that a little bit, and you and I will go ahead and get a chance to discuss that as well. And also, please note the disclaimer that Expat Stacker and Silver Conundrum are not financial advisors or experts. Investing is risky and comes with the chance that you could lose money. So talk to a licensed professional before making any decisions about what to do with your money. This video and all of the contents on our channels is for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. Okay, so when it comes to the macroeconomy, what's your perspective right now about how things are going in the United States?
To be honest with you, man, I think things are going bad. I mean, I'm looking around me. I'm seeing houses for sale. I'm seeing apartments for rent. I see businesses closing. I see gas stations with no gas at some of them. So I'm looking at things. I'm looking at even store shelves where you would normally see 4 or 5 items on a shelf. You now see one item taking up the entire shelf. There's things going on around us that are beyond what the political powers and the social medias and the regular media is telling us. And it's just beyond comprehension, to be honest with you. It doesn't make any sense. They're trying to tell us that the sky's blue, but yet there's a cloud on the horizon coming with a thunderstorm, and they don't want us to be prepared for it.
The reason I asked that question, obviously people might hear me ask that question and be like, obviously things are bad, but the reason that I asked that is to just get to your perspective, because honestly, for some people, the whole situation in that has happened this year with the coronavirus and everything has been good for some people, right? Like there are some people, some companies, individuals, people in certain fields who have made a lot of money in this situation, right? So it really depends on your perspective and where you're at and what you do and stuff like that. So, I just wanted to get a quick, check the temperature about what you're seeing. So, another quick question I was wondering. So you're saying that like people are, buying a lot of things from the store where the store shelves are empty. So like people are trying to kind of stockpile maybe some of the things that they think that they might need, and there are a lot of for sale for rent signs, so people are losing some very basic human needs, right? Like shelter. But in terms of the prices of things that you would find in, just say, the grocery store, for example, what's been going on with prices?
In my local area, man, in my little area of Mississippi, the food prices really hasn't gone up extremely much. But if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say between 6 and 10% is the average grocery bill now. That's how much it's gone up. Where before, and I'm just using my wife and I because I'm not going to vouch for nobody else. Where we would normally spend, say, $50 a week, we're now spending $55 and $60 a week on necessities. So you can see the price difference there is already 10% easily. If you look at the national average, Reuters and a few other websites and news organizations and economic sources have said the same thing. They said the average American would spend $65 a week on their groceries to feed one person. And they said now, that was pre-corona. Now they're saying that the average food cost is $71 to $74 a person is what it costs an average family right now to feed them. And if you look at what's going on around us, look at the shelves. Right now, people are buying shelf stable items like crazy. Like the Walmart where I'm at, people are buying the beans, the rice, the dried goods. I mean, things that are shelf stable, they're buying it in bulk. They're buying 4 and 5 times what they would normally use. And when they're doing that, they're actually buying more what they need because they're not going to use it all at one time. It's going to wind up going to waste. They didn't buy it in segments. They didn't buy 3 boxes here, 2 boxes there, 1 box now, and then rotate these products out as they need them. They just buy it all at one time. So it's all going to go bad at one time. Just because it's a shelf stable item doesn't mean it doesn't have an expiration date. And once it hits that expiration date, it's still going to be good for a little while longer. But at the same time, let's be honest, man. Most Americans, they're spoiled. We are a spoiled nation when it comes to certain things like that. We see an expiration date and we toss it. Even though it still has some value to it, we still toss it. And that's what's going to wind up happening when people see all these expiration dates on their shelf-stable foods they just bought. They're going to wind up tossing it. And it's such a waste of money, a waste of effort, and it's just a waste of everything around us. And when you look at what's going on in the grocery stores too, where you would see 5 items on one shelf that you'd have a variety of things to pick from, now you might have 1 or 2 items on that shelf. And what the stores are doing is they're having to put 1 or 2 items on the shelf to make the shelves look full, because that's how the supply chain's been messed up. You can't bring in 4 items anymore because the supply chain's been cut down. People are having trouble getting things, and they're slowly coming back. Don't get me wrong. But it's wintertime. So all those supply chains now are, as they were gearing up, they're now going to be challenged. I mean, when you look at what's going on also, look at some of the other big ag companies. Man, these guys have spent millions and millions of dollars, and they're never going to get caught up. They might be 21 or 22 when they get caught up to where they were at before. Because right now they're even preaching deficits on their inventories. That's not good for us.
Yeah, man. One thing in addition to Corona has been the natural disasters which have been occurring all around the world, which affects, agricultural products. Just before we were talking before we started the show, and you had mentioned that there's been already 3 hurricanes which have come through, right? And hit, and that's never happened before. And obviously there's fires in Australia that have happened, and those are really devastating. And there's the whole west coast of the United States has also been really badly damaged by fires for not even just this year, but the past like 5 years, really, it's been really bad. I mean, there's always been seasonal wildfires there, but it's been really, really bad the past couple of years. And, I think that on top of the whole Corona situation, it's exacerbated by these natural disasters. Where I'm at, I'll just give an example of, kind of compare and contrast with what you're discussing with what's going on over here. I definitely have noticed inflation in food prices. It depends on the item, but sometimes it's like almost double. And also sometimes they have limitations in the store. Like you can only buy one of this item, or they just don't have it. It's just not there. And we ask, where's this and what's going on with this item? And they say we have supply problems. And I've never seen that before. So yeah, it's not a very good situation when it comes to basic needs and those kinds of things as well. And I think that what you described about people's behavior of just buying, as much as they can all at once, that kind of tells me that they're afraid. They're afraid. They feel maybe this year was somewhat of a wake-up call to them, and they're doing their best to kind of prepare for what's going on, but they don't really know how. They just have their most recent experience to guide them, and they just feel fearful. So and I agree with you that we're not getting the full story, because some things just don't add up, with what they're reporting and what they say, and what I'm seeing and what's actually going on here. In terms of housing, it's a very different situation over here in Korea, because like half of the population of South Korea lives in the Seoul, Greater Seoul metropolitan area. So that includes Seoul, the city of Incheon, and as well as Gyeonggi-do, which is like the surrounding province around Seoul. So like half the country basically lives in an area Seoul is the same size as New York City, so it's not very big. So you have half the population concentrated in this one area, and it's kind of like a trap, because that means that's where all the jobs are. That means that's where all the money is. So that's where all the best schools are. That's where all the best hospitals are. And it's kind of like an institutional, self-fulfilling situation where it's very difficult to get out of. So housing has always been an issue, but it's getting really serious where like people can't really afford housing over here, and with the economic situation, it's been difficult as well, because the United States has a consumer-driven economy, and consumerism is big here in Korea as well, but the real driver of the economy here is import-export. So obviously when you got all the global economy shut down, it's not good for a country like this. So the government has been doing a lot of deficit spending, and trying to just hold on and maintain as best they can. Things are starting to get a little bit better, but definitely inflation for certain items has really hit hard. And I want to also say that we always hear and talk about inflation, right, on like these stacking channels. Did you know that housing prices are not included in the typical measure of the inflation. What you hear about the inflation rate, whenever they talk about inflation in the United States, those are for consumer prices, like we were discussing, like food and things like that. It does not include housing. So, have you paid attention at all? I know you own your home, so maybe not, but have you paid attention at all to housing prices over there?
I have actually. I've been paying attention to them quite regularly. They have actually started dropping down a little bit. For prime example, not just housing has dropped, but rental has dropped too. For the first time, I think in 10 years, so in a decade, for the first time, housing in New York City has dropped in Manhattan to less than $3,000 a month. And for I think it was a 2-bedroom apartment where people could spend less than $3,000 a month and get a very nice 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. Let that sink in. That's the first time in 10 years that's happened. There's in my area, prices of rent has dropped drastically, man. I mean, it's gone down so bad. When my wife and I owned our home, see, when we sold our house when we moved to Mississippi from the Carolinas, and when you look at what's going on around you and you look at the houses, a $180,000 home now, man, is going for about $160,000. They can't sell it. They can't find buyers right now. One, because people's credit took a hell of a hit. I mean, let's be honest. If you don't have a job, you can't pay your bills. If you can't pay your bills, your credit takes a hit. It's a revolving cycle. And if you can't, a lot of jobs nowadays rely on your credit report, which has nothing to do with you as a person. It's not your fault you lost your job. It's not your fault you couldn't pay your bills, but your credit reflects that you couldn't pay it. So now you can't get another good, decent job because your credit's bad because they pulled your credit report. And it's a revolving cycle now. And we as a country in the United States are going to be facing this as a crisis later on down the road, I think. And it's going to come to one of these things where they're going to have to say, okay, we forgive you guys. We know this wasn't your fault. And they're going to have to give everybody a credit forgiveness so we can start buying things again, years of the economy rolling again. Or they're going to have a hard reset and say, okay, we forgive everybody across the board. Let's just start moving forward and let's get things moving the way they need to be moving so the gears of the economy can start moving. Because if we're going to be in a perpetual downturn, or not just where the price of the economy itself is going to take the hit, but you, me, the world was going to take a hit too, because it's a domino effect, man. I mean, look at China, for crying out loud. China has been building cities. They're called ghost cities is the nickname for them. But if you don't have anybody to put into them, what good are they? When they have had major crop failures in the last couple of years, and this year particularly, they've lost 1/3 of their rice production. I mean, we are selling, as a country, the United States is selling China rice. Think about that. The United States is selling China rice. How does that happen? Natural disasters, as you were talking about, has not just affected the United States, it has destroyed global economies right now. It's put a damper on things. And China has actually been going into their reserves, man. It's crazy. And they just purchased, I think it's 19 million pounds or tons, 19 million tons of rice from the United States to be delivered by the end of 2021. And you put that in perspective, that's a lot of food. I mean, China's a big country, a lot of food. So that takes away from the United States supply also for what we see on our shelves. So when you start looking at what's going on around the world, who's buying what, it's just going to boil down to the inflation side, because we want it, we're going to pay more for it. They're going to get it because they've already pre-bought it in advance. Housing is going to go up because there's going to be a demand for it later on, but nobody can afford it, so therefore the prices are going to drop back down, because it's going to be like an in deflation. Like, it's going to inflate, but it's going to deflate at the same time, because the markets aren't going to be there. Nobody can afford it. Nobody has jobs. It's weird. It's so weird to watch things go up. Like, I've watched milk in the last 2 months, dude. This is no joke. My wife and I buy the same brand of milk, Horizon Milk. We literally watched it go from $2.96 a half gallon up to $5 a half gallon, back down to $3.96 a gallon or half gallon. literally within 2 months span. Let that sink in. That's how crazy it's gotten. And either you pay it or you don't. And that's just, I hate to say it, but that's the hard facts of what's going on around us.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I work with somebody who deals with, as you're talking about there with your example of China, and you're talking about the milk prices. I work with somebody who deals with importing agricultural products by purchasing them through futures contracts. And he's told me that the way that works is heavily dependent on the oil price, right? So I think that a lot of those drastic fluctuations that we're seeing, because all of those products, like that 19 million tons of rice you were talking about, right? How does that get to China? I mean, they got to use oil, to fuel those tankers. I mean, not just to get it across the ocean, but all the farm equipment, all of the trains, all the trucks, everything to get it over to the coast and, across the ocean, and then in China to distribute it everywhere. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing this push toward renewable energy and sustainable energy, electric vehicles and things like that. So, and when you mentioned about another thing you mentioned there is about the kind of like the reset, where they're going to forgive everyone's debt, or like they have to do this massive thing across the board. I can't remember which institution it was. I want to say it was the IMF, but it may have been the World Bank. I can't remember which one. But they also recently came out and said, we're going to have like a Bretton Woods style reset here. And a lot of people who are, invested in gold and silver, we were kind of getting excited about that. We're going back to the gold standard and stuff, but I don't know that that's necessarily what they meant. I think that they just meant like that's kind of like the size and scale of what's coming, what's to come, how big this reset is going to have to be because of how much damage has occurred. You also mentioned about like responding to my point about the natural disasters. Kimchi is a type of pickled cabbage that's very popular in Korea. They eat rice and kimchi basically with every single meal, no matter what it is. I mean, if you go to a restaurant in America, they're going to give you like bread and water at first for everything, right? So over here, you're going to get kimchi. It's, even if you don't order it, they're going to bring it to you. But I saw on the news that the price of kimchi is going to be going up this year because there were a few typhoons. It rained a lot in Korea this year, monsoons and just torrential rains. I had a little garden. The whole thing basically died because it's drowned all the plants. So it's absolutely true. The food supply and the supply chains themselves have been disrupted by the shutdowns from COVID, as well as the products themselves, the agricultural products being damaged through natural disasters. And then the price has just been going crazy because of the cost of transportation, because everything is, dependent on the oil price. So let's bring this around to precious metals. So number one, I think obviously we kind of almost talk about this in every episode. It would be that this is exactly why having a stack can help you out, is it in times like this when you need it, right? I think Transient Stacker has commented on a few of my videos and said that 2020 is like the poster child for why you should stack, and I couldn't agree more. But also, I also want to get your thoughts about, so things are not going very well right now in the global economy, both where I'm at on my side of the world and where you're at. So what do you see? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, right, one day to the next, but just from your perspective, what do you see as not even necessarily likely, but just some possible outcomes, some realistic outcomes, and how do you see that affecting precious metals?
Well, to be honest with you, let's look at what's going to be going on the last couple of days with silver. Silver dropped down to the 23. Now it's back up to almost just over 24, or right at 24. I mean, it's going to happen. It doesn't have a choice. Silver and gold, precious metals across the board, man, they're going to have to do something. They're a safe haven asset. There's no way around it. The dollar's breaking some record numbers, going down. I mean, everybody's printing fiat currencies. I mean, I honestly don't know any other way to put it. Precious metals are the answer to a lot of things. Everybody preaches crypto. But what backs crypto? Nothing. If you look at everybody who's been preaching everything that's going on around us, well, I hate to say it, you want something that can be backed by something and stands the test of time. And the only thing that does that's gold and silver, not platinum. I hate to say it, platinum bugs. Platinum hasn't been around that long for anything. We don't use it for money. It's never been used for money. And hell, if you took platinum out on the streets and you had a piece of silver and a piece of platinum, nobody would know the difference. Like, you really would. Like, you look at it and be like, yep, that's silver. If you stamped silver on it, people would think it was silver, even though it's platinum. So silver and gold are your two metals that has been given to us by God, so to speak, that are our money of choice. They don't have a choice but to go up. You just get watch. I hate to say this, man, and I don't want to be the "I told you so" guy, but I am going to sit back and I'm going to look into my crystal ball and I'm going to shake it really, really hard, and I'm going to say, "Magic 8-Ball, what's going to happen tomorrow?" And it's going to come back with the thing that says, "I don't know," because that's exactly the answer I'm going to have to give you is I don't know. But my projection is going to be, it's going to go up. It doesn't have a choice. They're printing fiat currencies like it's going out of style. And they're talking about printing even more. Other countries are giving daggum, what do they call that? Helicopter money, but it's when they give it to you every single month. My mind just went blank on it, brother.
Oh,
Help me out.
UBI?
Yes, universal basic income. Thank you. They're giving, some countries are doing that. And think about how much extra fiat that is that's being printed off because of it. The United States is actually talking about going to it. But not just the United States itself. The Federal Reserve is talking about circumventing the government in doing it. Let that sink in.
Yes,
So,
yeah, you talked about that in a recent video where you talked about central bank-backed digital currencies. And, I also did a video on that topic, and I had mentioned that the Bank of Korea is doing a pilot program. So they're going to be circulating a digital currency to test it in the real economy. And in terms of UBI, there's a province in Korea, I think it's Gyeonggi province. They do universal basic income. So there's a lot of experimentation with these ideas on a limited basis already happening here in Korea. I haven't looked into, I have to be honest, I haven't looked into how those programs are doing, but I agree with your general stance on it that, printing more fiat can only really lead to one thing. Now, we're talking about the way the economy is running now, and I also kind of have, and I've actually had this perspective prior to the coronavirus. I did a video in the beginning of the year talking about this, my market overview video, and basically I think that a lot of governments around the world are going to be doing infrastructure spending projects and to kickstart their economies. And in terms of trying to move towards more renewable, sustainable energies as well, China has just come out with their 5-year plan recently. That's like something that's pretty typical in communist countries. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that, strictly speaking, China has a communist economy, because they have a stock market. And I mean, I've been to China, and it's not what I would go by as like a strict definition of communism, but politically they are communist. And they have 5-year plans, that their Politburo comes out with for how they're going to plan the economy. And one thing that they've stated is that they're going to be moving toward renewable energies and electric vehicles and these things. And they're already kind of they've already been doing that. And from what I know about the Chinese government, when it comes to these kinds of plans and promises, is that they tend to kind of I mean, when you're setting the bar for success, right, like you would set it lower than you need to, and then you would over deliver and be like, look what I did, right? So that way you still have legitimacy. And that's exactly what they do. But they've set some targets for when they plan to do certain things, and so those are like low ball targets, and I think that they're going to overachieve so that they can say, look how great we are, we're moving in these directions. And I think all of the plans that they have, it's infrastructure, it's electric vehicles, it's renewable energies, these are all things that are going to be good for silver. So regardless of what we feel or think about the China and the Chinese Communist Party or whatever, this is what they're doing. And I mean, they're already moving in this direction, and they have one of the largest EV battery makers in the world right now. I think they might be number 2 or 3, CATL, and they're only growing. And their economy continues to grow. And it's not just China either. I mean, the largest EV battery maker is LG Chem, which is a company here out of South Korea. There's also Samsung SDI and SK Innovation. Those are also Korean companies, and they are really going hard after this electric vehicle segment. I mean, they're exporting hydrogen fueled trucks. They're building the infrastructure here in the country. So here it's already happening, but I believe that it's going to continue to spread and happen in other countries around the world, especially as we emerge from this whole global shutdown and lockdown. I mean, yeah, you could pay people UBI just for doing nothing and give them money every month, but I mean, wouldn't it be better to pay them for doing some kind of infrastructure projects, which, frankly, a lot of countries around the world, including the United States, I think really need. It's some of the infrastructure I know in the United States is quite old. So even if we don't transition toward electric vehicles or like this, sustainable renewable energy, we still need to revamp the existing infrastructure in a lot of places. But I think that the change toward, however you want to characterize it, the green economy, the electric economy, whatever, I think that is an opportunity, to continue to lead and be competitive. There are a lot of companies in the United States who are, going into that space. There's obviously Tesla's the big one, and then there's Nikola out of Arizona. There's another one in California. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, and LG Chem, I just mentioned them. They have a deal with GM as well as Tesla to supply batteries. And so, I mean, and SK Innovation they're involved in a lawsuit right now with LG Chem actually. But they're planning to build a second. They already have one, but they're planning to build a second plant in Georgia for electric vehicle batteries. So, the reason I keep bringing up all this information is just because I believe that was already, the momentum was already heading in that direction. And I just think that like the whole situation this year with the coronavirus, the natural disasters and the price fluctuations and everything like that, that just acted as like an accelerant, as like pouring rocket fuel on the fire to just put so much more momentum and energy and investment behind those things, infrastructure spending and renewable energies, electric vehicles and things like that. I really think this whole situation has just propelled that. Like it's brought the future 5 years out into today, basically. That's kind of how I see it. It's just accelerated us toward that even more. And honestly, that's going to be really, really good for gold and silver, especially silver because of its industrial properties. And platinum is not, as you mentioned, it's not a traditional monetary metal. Depending on what types of electric vehicles and what types of sustainable energy projects go on, it could still be used as a catalyst, but it's much more speculative than gold or silver. It could go either way, so I'm really heavy into the gold and silver, and I have some platinum, but I agree with you there. I'm definitely, this is not something we need to gamble on, like if you want to be speculative, then go ahead in the stock market and bet on some of these companies that are heading in this direction, right? I just gave some names, LG Chem, Samsung SDI. POSCO is another one. It's a steel manufacturer. You can get them on the New York Stock Exchange. They also have they're building a plant. They have a new company called POSCO Chem, which is going to supply copper foils and other materials that are needed for this. And by the way, copper, I think, is going to be another beneficiary of all this. What do you think about copper? I've been seeing more and more channels jump on board the copper train. I feel like in the beginning, it was like me and Silver 5150. We're the only ones. I had people making fun of me and all this stuff. Now I see, I think it's Daddy Silverbuck 78, kind of a smaller channel, but I see he has copper. Actually think he was on board with it. I see Pirate Stacker. I even saw you get some copper. I think that's mostly for a god. But what do you think about copper?
So here's my honest opinion about it. Copper is a monetary metal, but at the same time, it is truly an industrial metal now. There's no qualms about it. They're getting away from it, but it's also the base metal for almost all metals all base currency that we have as metal now. Downside to it is what I see on YouTube. I see it as a fad. I've seen it happen over the years. I've seen it come and go. People was like, "Oh, that's the coolest thing," and they jump on it. And then 50 people jump on the train, and then 6-8 months down the road, it's like you don't see it no more. Then about another 2 years down the road, everybody jumps on it, and then about 5 or 6 months later, everybody jumps off of it. I've seen it too many times, man, in my little bit of life, and it's like, here we go again. I mean, don't get me wrong. Copper stacking is awesome. It's somewhere that you start. But at the same time, I've seen it come and go. As far as it being a stackable metal, it's not feasible. It really isn't. Look at how much weight it takes to make 1 ounce of silver. Look at how much, and the same could be said for gold, I get it. But physically, look how many ounces of copper it takes to make 1 ounce of silver. I mean, you could literally just set it all aside and you could just get your 1 ounce of silver, call it a day. Copper's going up, but the downside is it's going up by the pound, not by the ounce.
Yeah, that is definitely a good point. I think, one thing that silver stackers can attest to is that, in the beginning, it's great, you get all this silver and stuff, and then you're just like, where am I going to put all this stuff? Well, imagine that with copper. So if you have the storage, then sure, but if not, then you might have to think about that twice. So that might be, honestly, that might be one where either mining stocks or trading the paper asset would be better, because then you don't have to worry about the storage. And I really do think I haven't, I have to be honest with you, I haven't seen the fad come and go like you said, but I definitely, trust you and believe what you're saying. But I feel like this time it could be different because of all the things that I was just mentioning about how energy and all that stuff is going to be transformed, because copper is such a key part of that, that, I think that the price could be affected by that more so than it had in the past. I mean, maybe I haven't looked into it to the.
No, I think you're absolutely right. The base copper, like the industrial grade copper, I think it's going to skyrocket. But bullion copper, I hate to say it, copper's sold in pounds, not ounces. And when the copper bullion, it's beautiful, man. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to take nothing away from it. Copper bullion is beautiful. I have copper. I'm not going to say I don't. I do. I have several ounces of copper, and it's beautiful. The problem is, copper has officially became an industrial metal. You can't go into a house without being copper there. You cannot go outside and look down a street without there being copper there. You can't go crank up your car without there being copper there. You can't even go stand in the middle of the road without there being some form of copper there, depending on where you live. I mean, it's integrated into our life. I mean, that's where it's at. I mean, it is that much of an industrial metal. I mean, for crying out loud, there's more copper above ground than there is gold, silver, and all other precious metals combined. I mean, that's just where it's at. But if we start trying to say, I'm going to collect 1 ounce of copper, and it's going to be worth $10 tomorrow, well, think about that, man. That means copper, if 1 ounce of copper is going to be worth $10 tomorrow, and I'm just using a round number for something for ease, that means $310 for a pound of copper is what it's going to boil down to, roughly. I'm using simple numbers. And it's like, well, if it's going to be worth that much, then how much is an industrial side going to go up, which means how much is the product going to go up? How much is inflation going to kick up for that product? So, I mean, you got to weigh all these options. Are they going to let the price of copper just skyrocket, which means the product is going to skyrocket, which means inflation is taking over, which means you're going to pay double, if not triple, for a product that you really shouldn't be spending that much for? There's just so many things that go into the copper aspect. Yeah, it's going to go up in value, but I don't think it's going to go up like we would as stackers would like to see it go up as metal people. But I really don't. In my heart of hearts, I've seen it too many times. Even when they started coming out with computers, started going hard and heavy, in the early 2000s. I remember when everybody was like, "Oh man, laptops, that's the next generation." Everybody's like, yeah, these laptops. Everybody's gonna start using copper and all these other metals. And yeah, they did. They all went up for a very short period of time, and they settled out, and they dropped back down, which is what they do. They see a peak, and then they settle down, they consolidate, and then they'll ride that consolidation for a very long time until they go back up again. And copper is just such a metal that it's so easily mined that if they want more of it, they just go mine 100 tons of it in a year, and there it is. And they just flooded the market again because the demand's there. That there's so many copper veins around the world that it's not even funny. Hell, there's one in South Carolina. It's one of the largest copper veins in the country, and it's under armed guard. It's owned by the government. There's a gold mine there too. It's owned by the government. People don't realize that. They don't mine it, but it's still owned by us. It's not in operation anymore. There's 3 more up between South Carolina and North Carolina that are gold mines that are owned privately, that they're actively mining gold as we speak right now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what they're trying to do is get as much as they can while the prices are high. I have buddies of mine that work there, and it's just amazing how things are going. And when prices are low, guess what? They lay people off. When prices are high, they bring people back into work. It's weird how they do that side of it, but they do.
Yeah. So I think like if we think about gold as purely the financial metal and silver as financial / industrial metal, I think that copper is more kind of like the other side of that, where it's mainly the industrial metal and it is used as money, but like you said, it's very plentiful, and it would really, really take a lot to make a significant, profit from it. But yeah, so maybe looking into the paper asset, or some of the mining stocks would be the better way to go about that if someone's interested in copper. And I do have copper as well, and I've been trying to get some this year, but it's just been, the supply has just been disrupted a lot. I got this Libertad that I ordered, and it's my first one. I got it to celebrate my 1 year on YouTube, and I just got a message today that it's going to be delayed like another month because it's coming from Mexico, and everything's just delayed, man. So I've had a difficult time getting my hands on the physical copper, but I think I will continue to stack it a little bit over time, and that way if it ever does like hit a big peak like that, like you said, maybe I can sell off some of it for a profit, and later on turn that into maybe silver or gold. And you did also mention, and I know Silver 5150 has talked about this as well, flipping copper coins, like the collectible ones. So like, for example, the World of Dragons or something like that, so that is another option, but that's like kind of like a different game there, when it comes to flipping and stuff like that. So, and that's a pretty good segue to preview our next part of this episode, which is going to be about fun versus the kind of more serious aspect. So in this first part of this episode, we've been talking about like kind of the serious side, and in the next episode, we're going to be discussing kind of the fun side and how that balances out. So great discussion. Hopefully it wasn't too grim and doom and gloom for everybody, but hey, that's the way things are going right now, and we just want to give you the real, our perspective. We don't want to sugarcoat it. We want to keep it real, and I think we did, but we try to give some good, helpful, useful information for people. We probably in this episode talked about precious metals less than in any other episode, but I think that people can probably put 2 and 2 together and see how those things kind of go together. Anything else you want to say, Silver Conundrum, before we say goodbye for this part?
No, brother. Everybody, if you want to collect what you want, stack what you want. Do not let us deter you from what you like to do. Simple as that.
Very good point. And with that, everybody, the Expat Stacker and Silver Conundrum, and we'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.